Hey everybody, welcome to the Everything Paranormal Show. I'm your host, Josh Morris, and tonight joining me is going to be Matt Sorge of SRS Paranormal. I'm excited to have him here. Guys, I hope you can hear me. We had some technical difficulties. We had to start the show over. That's what happens when we go live sometimes. So we'll fix that in post on the intro. All right, Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey Josh, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. And why don't you tell the folks out there a little bit about yourself, because if they were watching earlier, they didn't hear you. So
They just saw me talking with no audio. I got you.
Right.
My name is Matt Sorge. I'm founder of SRS Paranormal. We also go by the Southern Research Society. I've been involved in paranormal research for about 14 years. My day job is I'm a firefighter here locally in the Tri-Cities. And I just really enjoy, being involved in the paranormal. I think it's a fascinating field, and I'm excited to get to talk with you about some stuff this evening.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's definitely something I love seeing is people that are in the paranormal field. And, it's just, I've been off and on myself for over 25 years, so I've got to meet a lot of different people, and it's always exciting to meet people, especially when they're local. So it's awesome. We live in the same area. Really excited to, when I got a chance to talk to you guys, to get to know you a little bit for a little bit there. And your story is really awesome because I myself consider myself sort of I was very unguarded. I'm still always a little bit skeptical, even though I've had all these experiences and things like that. But I want to dive into your story a little bit and talk about your past. For those of you, if you could, where was that point at which you started having your first experience?
Yeah, so here's the thing. So for me, growing up, I never really experienced things. I knew people and even family members that had experiences, but I was I hate to say dismissive, but it was almost like, you know what, that's probably just them overreacting to things, or they think stuff has happened that is, making them believe these things. So I didn't discredit them per se, but I didn't believe, because I'm the kind of person that I've almost got to see it, touch it, feel it, experience it for myself for it to be real for me. And being in the job that I do full time as a firefighter, we're around a lot of tragedy and death and things, and we see things sometimes, I guess, in a slightly different light maybe than other people, however you want to view that. But
right.
Through this job, I've also connected with a lot of guys that I work with in other ways, and that's kind of where my paranormal story starts. Another thing that I like to do is I'm an avid relic hunter. I like to go to historical sites. I'm a big history buff, big Civil War buff, and that's one of the things that I do, and that's really my hobby. This has become a lot more serious than a hobby for me, but at the time, my primary hobby was going out and searching for Civil War relics. So long story short with that, here locally in the Tri-Cities, I had gotten permission from a landowner to go on this farm. And on this farm, about 10 or 15 acres off the roadway sits, or used to sit, it's torn down now, but used to sit an old farmhouse. Probably late 1800s, early 1900s, looking at the architectural style of the house. And, it was right in the middle of this farm field, and it had been abandoned for decades, dilapidated. It just had that real look and feel of the quintessential creepy old haunted house, I guess, if you will. But of course, at that point in time, I don't really believe or subscribe to any of that. So I'm there, searching for relics, and I get this signal, and I'm got that creeped out feeling. And back then, the only thing I could kind of equate it to is uneasy. Now, it's the same exact experience that I have when paranormal phenomena is occurring. You know, that hair in the back of your neck standing up sensation, that on guard feeling in every fiber in your body. That's the feeling I had while I was trying to recover this target. And I look up, and as I'm looking up at this house, in the second story window, I see this full apparition. It's a elderly looking woman in a light, I won't say white, but in a lighter colored dress, looking out the window at me. And in the time my brain processes that there shouldn't be anybody in this abandoned place, she vanished just like that. In thin air, she was gone.
Wow.
And I was in disbelief of what I saw because I knew that I couldn't have seen what I did, but I did what any rational person does when they experience something like that. I grabbed my shovel and my detector and I ran from my truck and I threw everything in there and I took off out of there because I didn't know what just happened. So I start the rationalization process on my way home, on my way down the path to leave the property. I'm thinking, okay, you worked late last night. You worked at the fire hall last night. You guys had a long night. You were up. You're just making this up in your mind. You're seeing something. You're thinking it's something else. But I never could shake that feeling, and I never could shake what happened. Fast forward about 6 weeks later, I get the opportunity to go back to that property, and I get, I guess a better way to say it is the nerve to go back to that property.
Right.
I'm back in the same place, but the whole time I'm just really fixated on the house. I'm just totally freaked out about this house, and I'm just looking at that window, just wanting to try to figure out what happened to me, and part of me kind of afraid something might happen again in that window. So I can't shake looking at the house, and I'm again get another signal. The sun is setting behind me, so I can see my shadow cast along the ground in front of me where I'm digging this hole, and from my right to my left, the shadow of what looked like a person passing behind me went behind me. So I jump up and turn around thinking the landowner is coming up wanting to talk to me or somebody's on the property. And again, I'm 10 to 20 acres away from any other people other than the landowner who would be, down at the bottom of the farm in his house where he lives. And there's nobody there. So I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm done with this property. I'm done with this place. And I put my stuff in my truck again and I head out. But those two experiences altered my life drastically because from that point on, I became thirsty for knowledge. And I became thirsty to try to understand what I had experienced. And I started my journey in the paranormal really to prove that it's us that has this phenomena, not that it is something that is measurable and tangible. And now 14 years later, I've gone full circle from complete skeptic to believer, but that doesn't mean I don't still take a skeptical approach to things. I always want to find, and our team always wants to find that rational explanation for things before we go to a paranormal answer. And a lot of times I don't really know that we find a paranormal answer as much as it's an anomaly that we cannot explain with an earthly explanation.
Right.
So in a nutshell, that's my story and how I got to where I am.
Yeah, and that's really awesome because I think that there is a group of people in the paranormal field that have that similar story. Even myself, just having an experience and then sort of sometimes almost disregarding it, wanting to just sort of rationalize it. And because I think sometimes, people often that get into paranormal sometimes can get labeled as like crazies and things like that.
Absolutely.
And, but I have always considered myself sort of that normal, logical, reasonable person, just like an everyday guy or something, I don't consider myself crazy and out there and, think these weird thoughts, But at the same time, like yourself, I had enough experiences, and when I got my very first evidence, solid evidence in my own home, it just really kind of kicked it into gear for me, saying, Josh, what are you doing? You need to believe this stuff's real. So that's awesome to hear that that same story from you, and again, here you are later in that sense. So you talked a little bit about the team. So tell us a little bit more about when you sort of got, I guess you said you were founder. So just tell us a little bit about how the team kind of came together and sort of the structure of it, and just tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I think I want to add one other little point real quick to what we were just talking about. In looking back and reflecting in the last 14 years and then even thinking back to other experiences in life, that things that I probably dismissed other people told me were probably actually the first experiences, not maybe for myself, but for people I knew, family members, that I never really looked at those deeper, because I think that spirit, the other side, whatever you want to call it, that realm, I really think they select us. and that may sound strange, but I don't think things happen by happenstance or coincidence. I think everything happens for a purpose and a reason. I think I was meant to be on that property because, ironically, that's a place that I never would have been looking for the type of relics I looked for, but I ended up there, and I think it was by a reason. I think we all get drawn to this because we're pulled to it. That's just my personal theory. I can't prove that, obviously, but it's just kind of what I kind of feel is the case. But so a little bit about my team. So
actually, real quick, let me interrupt you real quick.
Yeah.
Only because I did want to cover a comment before we get too far. But in the chat, Terry Lynn said, "Thank you for your service as a firefighter. Very demanding job. Much respect to you." And of course, I See You See Me said hi. So I just wanted to kind of take a moment real quick to throw that out there. Terry Lynn is my wife, actually, by the way. So she's watching the show.
Well, thank you. But no, so a little bit about the team. I think you were involved with, you and I talked before, and you were involved in teams in the past, and teams go through transitions. I mean, you have people that come and go, and actually when SRS originally founded, it was myself and the guy that I metal detected with at the same property, and he actually had some experiences of his own there, and that's kind of when we both kind of started and originally started SRS. His life took him in a different direction, and he didn't continue on with things, but the team evolved and different people came on board.
Yeah.
And as we started working with and branching out with other people about 4 years ago, in fact, I started doing some. It was by, some people would say coincidence. I say by design. One of the guys that was with our team for a very short period of time found this place called the Nickerson's Need House in Glade Spring. And he contacted me and said, "Hey, we can do the investigation up there. They allow teams to come in there." So he contacted the lady, which is Dr. Claudel, and set up the investigation. And we went up there and met with her and investigated the place. And we immediately clicked. We immediately had this connection that we just really clicked, and we did that investigation. And I did something that I don't normally do or didn't back then, but I did that night. And I said, "Hey, why don't you come back and investigate with us a little bit and kind of see what we do and see what you think." So she did. She came back, she hung out for a couple hours, and she had a good time. So we went back and did the reveal and showed her the evidence that we had collected and the anomalies that we had collected. She was really excited about that. So we kind of kept in touch, and there was a few events that happened that she invited us up to, and we built a professional relationship and started working together. And she is a psychic medium and a spiritualist investigator. So, and she's a she's a PhD. She's an actual, and she's an author.
Always good to have on the team.
Absolutely, and she's just a really very very educated person. But so she introduced us to a whole new world of stuff that we had never experienced before: psychics, spiritualism, the Victorian methods, things that we had never seen.
Right.
And we started working with her and her daughter Nikita a little bit, and there was another group that we'd worked with some too. And basically we started doing things and seeing this opportunity through working together where we could cross-validate, and we could cross-validate the experiences that they were having on the psychic side through our meters and through our approach, and they were able to help us understand by connecting with things who we were speaking with in some cases. So we saw this opportunity to cross-validate. And I think what happens a lot in the paranormal, I think when you sit back and look at the paranormal, we kind of have this three groups. You have the traditional conventional researchers, much like ourselves, that use equipment and meters and theories and work on I don't like to use the word scientific because it's hard to use science when you can't duplicate the environment every single time. I like to say methodical approach because I feel that that's what we as researchers need to be, is methodical, and always try to do the same thing over and over to try to validate our experiences. But you have us in that group, and then you have the psychics who they don't really need meters and things to feel their experiences and have their experiences, but it's really a face value kind of situation. And then you have spiritualists who use the old school Victorian tools, and again, there's this disconnect. But we're all trying to search for the same answers.
Right.
We're all trying to get to communicate with what's on the other side and answer the question of what is the paranormal phenomena.
Now, I
But we're
know a
doing
lot of people
separately.
are like familiar with a lot of the traditional methods they see on TV. Why don't
Sure.
you, if you don't mind, just briefly, could you maybe explain a little bit about the Victorian methods? Because again, your team is unique for kind of blending multiple methods in your research. So if you could just explain a little bit about the Victorian methods for people.
Thank you for getting me back on point. I rambled there a little bit, but yeah. So the Victorian methods, and that's what Rhonda introduced us to. Is they would use things like the psychic trumpet, which is really this long cylindrical device that when you are doing stuff like a seance, which is a method that we use, it is something that we as a team now use in conjunction with meters and cameras and recorders. The psychic trumpet will actually amplify EVP. So even stuff that you normally wouldn't hear disembodied, it is able to amplify that through its design. So you actually can amplify those things. So when you can have something like that happen and then you can pick it up on a recorder, that to me is really the kind of stuff you're looking for. So we have that dowsing rods, which is something you've seen old timers use for, or divining rods.
Right.
And a lot of people laugh at those, honestly, because they don't understand how you can use them in paranormal research.
Sure.
People think they're easy to manipulate, but if you've ever held them, they're really not, because you would really have to swing your wrists to move them. And we really, real quick, I'll sidebar here, but we originally, when we saw dowsing rods, were kind of like, I don't know, people can manipulate it. Well, then we started actually trying the rods, and it's like, well, no, you can't manipulate it, but is this more of a telekinesis type of thing?
Right.
Are you using, is it your mind and that energy, especially if you're psychically gifted anyway, you're going to operate on a different frequency and be able to push energy.
It's
So is that
psychokinetic energy.
exactly, yeah, PK. So is that what's, is driving the rod? So that's what theory worked on a while, and we kind of found out through our research that that's not really what's going on there. And we're actually pioneering a new method that we're not releasing a lot of details on yet, but long story short, to work the rods, you have to be able to see them. But if you can see the control person, kind of like the Estes method, but on a spiritual side, if you can see the person that's asking the questions, you could read lips. So to remove that bias, our other lead investigator, Kevin King, came up with an idea. Let's put the person in isolation headphones. They can't hear the control questions being asked. And let's face them away from the person asking the questions. And then let's see if the rods still give us the yes-no answers.
Right.
And we're finding by doing stuff like that, we're validating some of those Victorian methods. Scrying, spirit boards, those dowsing rods. We're combining the two schools of thought and trying to bring those three separate schools of thinking into one linear path to help us validate those experiences.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's awesome. Again, I always have a lot of respect for teams that really try to rule out just emotion. I mean, you just see some people get so hyped up and so worked up, and they're like, "Oh, did you see this? Did you heard that knock? Oh my God, the place must be haunted and possessed and demons." They just get so worked up over things, and it drives me crazy. So I really do. I always appreciate teams. Again, that's why I was drawn to you guys, because I just appreciate teams that really take the time out to try to validate these methods. Again, because you could just take some dowsing rods and you could probably, but again, if you remove those things, just like with a lot of the type of things you always try to remove
any bias, absolutely.
Exactly. Yep. Try to remove any kind of bias and things. So, by all means, I love the fact that you guys are doing that, and that's what's awesome about you guys. So, since we're talking about different methods, what is one of your favorite evidence gathering methods?
Yeah. And I know some people like certain things, like some people love EVP, some people love video, some people love photography, they love those different aspects. And that's another thing that, in building our team, we tried to do is have specialties, like Kevin King, the other lead investigator. He's our ITC guy. That's his expertise. That's his area. Our historian, he's an actual, went to college to be a historian, so that's his thing. We have Christina Bowen, who was one of the photographic analysis experts for TAPS. They actually was one of the people when pictures were sent in, she was one of the folks that actually dissected those on a forensic level. So we have these different areas of expertise. So we try to make sure that we all have different things that we like. I'm the video guy. I like to do the video work. I do all of our video stuff anyway, but I'm also the one that when we have evidence or anomalies, I tear down the video side of things.
Right.
But to answer your question, what is my favorite method? For me, I like when you have multiple things. Like if we can match information on the EDI that gives us environmental data to an actual experience where an investigator is touched, and we also captured something on ITC, when we can get a secondary or tertiary validation, that to me is when I really get excited about the evidence. So I don't think I have a one thing that I really think is my favorite method. I think my favorite method is what works. And what I mean by that is when you go into a location, you can't always use a hammer to build something. Sometimes you need a screwdriver. So I think knowing when to mix it up is probably the essential thing for me.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for me, and one thing that never gets old to me is EVPs.
Absolutely.
It's classic, I know, but that was the very first thing that ever introduced me into a true world of like, wow, did I really just hear that? And so whenever I hear when I hear spirits and ghosts and things like that, basically it gives me goosebumps, and man, I love EVP still. It's just the good old fashioned go to that I just love.
Like
I really
There's nothing
love hearing
like
it.
that. Absolutely. There really is nothing like that Class A EVP. And that's something I do want to touch a little bit real quick on is ITC. That's one of those controversial things. There are people that go ITC is absolute nonsense. But
now you might want to explain to everybody that's not in the ghost hunting world. You might want to explain to them what ITC is and everything.
Oh my God, what is it? Instrumental transcommunication. Basically, ITC is stuff, what would fall into that category would be the Ovulus, the Spirit Box, the Ghost Box, the SB7, the SB11, Frank's Box, going all the way back to Frank Sumption's original design, the original Ghost Box. Ghost boxing is a whole separate area, and that's an area that honestly, when I first heard about it, I totally was like, nope, that's too much. There's too much pareidolia there. There's too much chance for you to convince yourself you're hearing things, or groupthink takes over. Kind of like an EVP can have this happen too. I play it, and you hear Bob, and then you tell me you hear Bob, and then I play it for somebody else, and they hear something else. They hear, slob. And before you know it, we all don't know what we heard. And the same thing can happen in the ITC world. So when we got into ITC, and like I said, Kevin, our other lead investigator, he really latched on to ITC. From the standpoint of let's break this down and either credit it or discredit it for our use, not for the community, but for is it going to be part of our toolkit? So what we do with ours, we subscribe more to the white noise theory, and we've in our research have found the white noise theory, it works more for us than radio snippets. And that's one of the theories in ITC is it's those little radio snippets that spirits can somehow manipulate and string those words together. That's where the pareidolia risk really comes in for me as an individual. The white noise is a little different. Now, can you have pareidolia by sound popping and things? Sure you could. But here's the thing. What we do with our SB7s is we remove the AM and FM antennas from them, and then we put them in a Faraday bag. And if we're running a spirit box session, we use small speakers that attach, because when you hook a speaker, you are creating a short range antenna. And then we only scan on FM because we put them in Faraday bags. And a Faraday bag essentially blocks FM transmissions. And then we also sweep all the way through. We know how long, and we've timed it out, how long it takes to sweep at 150 or 200. I prefer 150. And you sweep through that range, and you know how long that takes. We make sure we go through 3 complete times, and we know we have what we call clean audio. So if we have clean audio coming out of there, now if we start getting answers and questions to our questions, now we're getting valid responses. And in fact, I just recently put an older clip up from our home haunt, the Nickerson Sneed, where we're based out of now. And it's to me one of the greatest pieces of evidence we've ever captured, because we had documented environmental changes with the EDI. which meant we got barometer changes, EMF changes. We had a spike in pressure at the same time that Kevin is physically touched. And when we asked who just touched Kevin, we got a full on-the-shoulder response, which is a sentence, not a word,
right,
through white noise. That's an excellent piece of validation right there, because
right.
you had all those parts come together. That's the stuff that I live for as a researcher. So we're finding that it's like anything else. If you don't do EVP right, and you don't, set your recorders right, and you don't know the limitations of your recorders, you can't validate your EVPs. It's the same thing with ITC or SLS cameras or whatever else you've got to know the limitations.
Yeah, and some of it just takes time sometimes, and that's what I tell people. It's like when you go out on your first investigation, and you just build from it. Every time you go out, you learn something new. You learn a little more about your equipment, and you just learn, and then you're always trying to perfect it. You're always trying to improve on every technique and all those things, and that's what makes the difference between seasoned investigators and non-seasoned and things like that, or I guess you'd say your thrill-seeking groups.
Yes.
So Tales from the Grotto said, I wish people were this precise with their spirit box use. Yeah, and exactly. There's a lot of sloppiness out there, that's for sure. So with that being said, so Matt, what do you think overall about the quality level of paranormal investigation right now in general that you've noticed? What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I don't ever like to throw off on other people, because I don't want, obviously people throw off on us. So I try not to do that. I think what I try to do is, like you just said, kind of separate the thrill seekers from the serious researchers. And for me, I gravitated to working with people who I know are taking this serious.
Right.
I think we do spend too much time in the paranormal. There's a little bit of ego there of, well, our method is better than your method, and I think we've got to get away from that.
Right.
I think we have to, and there's always going to be in any walk of life, any profession, any hobby, any whatever you want to call what we're doing, whatever you want to label that as for you, there's always going to be really good people at it, average people at it, and people that probably should have never gotten into it in the first place. I think the intention, so I guess where I'm going with this is the intention of what you're trying to do is the key. If you're getting into this for thrill seeking, that's a very dangerous, slippery slope, because there are things, and we could have a whole nother conversation on that, that you can tap into that are dangerous, and it's not something to be taken lightly and just dismissed. So what the quality, I think that people don't take the time in life, whether it's paranormal or other things, to do the research and do the homework. For me, I had that experience in 2000 and 2006 or so. I don't think I know for a fact. I didn't go on a first quote-unquote investigation until about a year later. I spent a full year trying to understand what this phenomena is, theory, elementals, residuals, intelligence, old energy, demons, all these different things that we could, sprites, all these things that we could encounter, and trying to understand what they were, and then methods of how do we get into that, and then when we get into that, how do we try to put a methodical approach to it to where we can constantly validate those things. So I think that's what's lacking. I think a lot of teams want to go out there and they want to get evidence, and they don't take those extra steps to debunk or validate. And the last point I want to make on that is, I think as the person presenting the evidence, we have a responsibility to be able to validate what we did to achieve that piece of evidence, or discredit or credit that piece of evidence. By the same token, I think the detractors or the skeptics have the burden of proof to prove the opposite. Right. So I think that's a two-way street.
Yeah,
I don't know if I answered the question there, but I think I tried to.
No, that was good. And I think that certainly with the introduction of social media nowadays, I think is both good and bad. Good in the sense that, yes, we're able to share now. We are able to join our communities up sometimes and come together. And just like right now, obviously we're using YouTube and Facebook and all those things to kind of bridge the gap with your team and my show, and we're able to communicate through YouTube. So that's awesome. But also at the same time, you get a lot of these channels that there's some specific and I'm not going to throw shade out there either. Specifically, all I'm saying is I'm trying to elevate the quality that's out there, because there is some thrill-seeking people out there that are just ruining the paranormal field by the stunts they're pulling, and people are of course just glued to it because it's entertainment. So of course they're subscribing. They got millions of subscribers. But at the same time,
there's a big danger there. There's a big danger not only for those people, but there's a danger for what they could be stirring up, especially if they're going into somebody's house and doing these things. So that's a yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. That's fine. That's a slippery slope for people doing what they're doing for the sake of ratings or numbers or viewers or whatever.
Right, and I do a lot to try to draw in people for my shows and things like that. But at the same time, it's like I'm trying to do it to help people. There's a good cause behind it, and it's not something that. And I think that's important, that when you have a paranormal team that is trying to actually help people versus serving their own selfish needs and thrill seeking. Tales from the Grotto says in chat, I personally don't trust anything that can be manipulated by numbers, so I don't use spirit boxes because the data is too whimsical, but Matt's methods distance it from being anecdotal evidence. And he also said when you label entertainment as evidence. So yeah, he makes some good points there. And exactly, it's, some of these people, and it just cracks me up that in this, and I'm a part of a lot of the paranormal groups on Facebook, some of the big groups, and there's so many times people are just throwing up these pictures of like, oh my God, can you believe this? Can you believe what I caught? And I'm just like, I'm sorry, but it's just dust or bugs or light refractions, things like that.
100%. Yeah, there's like how many this is like a pet peeve of mine. I am so tired of all the orb videos and pictures. Here's me. If I saw, which I have been fortunate enough to see, a ball of light myself that interacts and does something, then that's an interesting anomaly. It's an anomaly. That's all I'm going to say that is. Even if that's captured on video and witnessed by your own eyes, it's still an anomaly. The rest of those, and that's why I love having somebody like Christina that really tears down those photographs. 99.9%, it's dust, pollen, water vapors, bugs. I mean, you name it. There's a lot more things it is than what people want to say that they think it is.
Right. Exactly. So with your what is your sort of caseload like on a basis? Are you guys pretty busy with a lot of residential type stuff? Do you do a lot of abandoned type stuff? Where's that kind of
yeah, for us, I mean, we do a little bit of both. We did a lot of residential work for a while, and I'd like to touch on residential work for just a minute. First, I want to touch, I guess, on investigations in general for just a minute. I think a lot of people, and we see this a lot on, like you're talking about, the YouTube thrill seekers or whatever, they think the investigation starts when you show up and you start just taking equipment out and, for lack of better words, having experiences.
Right.
The investigation starts in our case, weeks before, especially in the case of residential. You got to meet with the people.
Yeah.
I want to interview the people at the house. I want to talk to the kids. I want to talk to the mom. I want to talk to whoever's there. I want to know about their experiences. I want to know about any history of the tough questions. Is there alcohol abuse? Is there drug abuse? Is there mental illness? Because all these things are pieces of that puzzle.
Right.
The history of the property, the people that lived there before, they're all pieces of the puzzle. It's not an all-inclusive thing. So you got to be responsible and research the property ahead of time. You have to interview your clients and know what they're experiencing and what they hope to get out of this. And you have to be truthful and honest with them and say, look, we're going to look at all these things. We're going to look for every earthly explanation for every single thing. We're going to check for faulty wiring. We're going to check for anything that could be causing the phenomena or things that they're experiencing. And that's where it starts. So
Yeah.
the investigation is just a piece of the puzzle. And then it's actually reviewing that evidence, then going back, putting that into a report, again, leaning on my fire department background. It's how we handle a scene. You pre-plan it, you run the call, you do what you need to do, then you document what happened, and then you offer a solution. And I think this is where I think the residential is the most important thing.
Right.
When people call you into their home, they are at their wits' end. They have tried everything that they can possibly do to solve what's happening to them, and now they're looking to you to be an expert and give them a solution. So if you come in there and stir things up, and then you don't offer a solution, you've really done more damage than good. And that should be, if you don't understand that as a team, and this is, I guess, my cautionary tale, if you don't understand that as a researcher and as a team, you need to be very, very, you should not be doing a residential if that's the case.
Right.
Because you can do a lot more harm than good if you're not careful. So
Yeah,
to answer your
I think I
question
just
on
made this
caseload,
point actually recently. I said, look, I said, if you are not prepared to follow through with these cases and you don't care
right.
about people in general, then then just go to an abandoned building.
Yeah.
And
Or
do
go to
your
the
thrill
public
seeking
places.
there where you're
Yeah.
not going to really,
right.
you're only going to probably harm yourself and your loved ones. But don't take it out on other people that really need your help.
Exactly.
I mean, that's, again, this is part of my big message that I am a huge fanatic about is help people. Help people. It's not what you see on TV. You don't just show up and
That's right.
do overnight investigation and then deuces you're out. Okay,
Nope.
there's a lot of,
You're making
like
a
you
commitment
said,
to these people.
It's a process.
In my mind. Yeah, to me, you're making a commitment to these people that have asked you to come in and help them. And that means seeing it through. You're absolutely right. And I think we've actually had calls where we've gone back in because other teams really came in, made it situation less tenable, and then refused to come back because maybe they got a little more thrill than they bargained for, and they didn't know how to handle it.
Right.
So if we don't know how to handle a situation, we're going to call in other people, and we're going to see that through with that person until a solution is found. And the other thing I think that you have to keep in mind, I'm a Christian, but I also have to understand not everybody is. So if I go into an environment and they're having experiences and I tried to give them what I think is the solution that's right for what my belief system is, that may not have the same result for them.
Right.
Because if they don't believe in the solution, then that may not work. And I know that's a deep, we could get lost in the weeds topic, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. You have to adapt yourself to the people too, to make sure the solution that you're bringing to the table actually is resolution. But to answer your question, I don't do abandons very often. I mean, we have, because a lot of times there's a lot of other issues with that. It's getting the permissions, because I don't believe in ever going anywhere you don't have permission to be. That's wrong.
Yeah.
You should never do that. And I'm not saying that a lot of people that do abandons do
Yes,
that.
kids, don't ever do that, kids. Get permission.
Exactly. Yes, get permission. And you should. It's the right thing to do if you're going to be credible. And I think all we have in this business is our credibility. We do residential work when we're asked to, and we don't do as much as we used to, just because our schedules are kind of crazy. But we do when those cases come up. We go to a lot of your big haunted places because they're available. And they cost money, but we go do those because those are places where we can try theories and we can try techniques and we can work and hone our skills on those things without you know what I'm trying to say? You kind of go in, you do your investigation, you can work on your research, and you don't really have to worry about when you leave because other teams are going to come and do their thing. You're not stirring the pot and then leaving somebody with a mess, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So we do a lot of those too because you get to go to places, some of the most haunted places in the country, and we've been blessed and able to do that. And it gives you different experiences. So that's kind of our caseload, is a little bit of both. And then we do public stuff. And our thing with doing public stuff is trying to preserve and help the historic location if it's active. That's the first thing. We go in on our own. We assess it. We just did it with the Deer Inn. We were invited to come into the Deer Inn. If you're not familiar with that, that's a very, very historical place in Blountville, Tennessee. They invited us in to see if they had activity, and we found that they did. And now...
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We got a poor connection. I don't know if you can hear me. All right. Well, I'm not sure if Matt, if you can hear me, but you froze out on us, and it says reconnecting. So
we'll probably host.
Can you
hear me?
Yeah, you're back now. So
All right. Sorry about that.
that's okay.
Don't know what happened.
I don't know. Just I guess apparently a poor connection, so or something on it. Some technicalities. I don't know. Who knows? It could have internet issues going around here. So just bear with us, folks, as we're working out the poor connection. I've got 200 meg by 100 meg, so hopefully it's not on my side. I've got pretty good internet. I'm not sure what's going on, but hopefully Matt is okay. And of course, I'll take a moment here. Tales from the Grotto said I was appreciated the shows that presented their prior research before just jumping in and recording. And I mean, that is a good point. And just to follow up while we're waiting on connection, we may even have to try to call him back here in a second. But it's certainly to kind of follow up a little bit on what he's saying. He does make a good point, which we were talking about earlier, is the thrill seeking and things like that. But when you do some of these experiments, not experimenting new techniques in residential homes. So I think that's a really good point that Matt made. Is definitely trying to use the right locations for those opportunities. And then of course when it comes to other things, like residential homes, making sure that you're not trying all these crazy techniques and stirring up the pot and all those things. So I appreciate, Matt. I know we're I guess having some connection difficulties tonight, apparently. So I appreciate you bearing with me on that. I don't know if it's which end it's on, if it's yours or mine.
Can you hear me now?
It's a live show. What can we do, right? I mean, that's why we do it. We do it. We just go all out here. We just do it live and see what happens.
Can you hear me now, John?
I can hear you.
But you can't see me?
I can see you.
Okay, so I'm back? All right. No, yeah, that's the...
Uh-oh. All right, so... and we're having troubles with Matt again. All right. But yeah, folks, one thing, again, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Matt and SRS Paranormal, a little bit about what I know about him too. Again, what you see behind me that I chose for my background is that Nickerson Sneed home that he's talking about. It's old. I put that as my background tonight. I could, you're kind of coming and going, Matt. So.
I don't know if you can hear me. If you can hear me, yes. I can hear everything you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, you're just kind of freezing up and coming and going. Then it'll say, like, connection lost. But I'm not having anything dropped on my end. So I don't know if it's just maybe if you got... how's your connection where you're at?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any freezing on my... my little camera's up in the corner. I'm not seeing any freezing here. And I'm hearing you fine. I have high speed with Charter, so I'm not sure what the hang-up is.
Might be Charter. I work for Point Broadband, so
it could be. It could be.
I have to throw a little shade at Charter. Can't help it. Sorry.
Hey, I don't blame you. I do too. Every chance I get.
Yeah. Right. But yeah. Like I said, Matt and they're doing so good with their team. I really look forward to doing some more stuff. I think we had even mentioned about maybe doing some stuff together, some collabs in the future. That would be really cool. Maybe bring you guys some more stuff out from the field. I'd like to do some more stuff out in the field again and bring that to you guys. So if you could, Matt, while we still have you, how about what if you let us know a little bit about what you guys got going on and coming up soon?
Yeah, so like I was talking a little bit about, the Deer Inn is a historic inn and invited us in, and we're getting ready to we'll be doing a couple public nights there. We'll be back at the Tin Haynes for some public nights. And the thing we like doing about those publics is not only does it help us raise some needed funds for those historic sites, but it also gives us an opportunity to share about the paranormal, about what we do and how we do it, and kind of show people more than just what they've seen through YouTube and these other places. So we have those coming up, and I think we're going to go back to the Ross Opera House November 2nd, which is an awesome place if you get the chance to go up there. It's one of those kind of places.
Oh, we were doing so well. We were doing so well. All right, hold on one second. Let me see if I can... Hey, look, it's him behind me. Hold on. All right, guys, I'm not trying to end the stream on you. All right. Yeah, I was trying to see if, because we're having that issue, I was thinking about. All right, guys, bear with me one second here. All right, hold on. We're gonna be, we'll be right here. I still got the microphones hot. Let me try calling you right back. Let me restart this Skype and see if that helps.
All right, sounds good.
All right, guys, just bear with us here. We're going to try to restart this. See if we can get this going again. And we'll give him a Skype call here. And like I said, this is live. You know, what do you expect? We love our live.
Are you there?
I'm here.
Am I there?
We're going to try this again here. We'll let me get back here on the screen there. Now we're back up on the screen. So, all right, we'll try this again. Now that we restarted Skype, maybe, who knows? Like I said, it might have been the application. Who knows? It's technical. It's Technical Thursday.
That's right.
All right. We did have some comments. Again, got some thumbs up comments and some good stuff. And also Sean Carter says great show. So it's glad that we're hearing, and I think I kind of know Sean. I've had him on my show a few times, and I know he always appreciates ghost hunters that actually are trying to do good things, you know, and not just thrill seeking and all that type stuff. Because again, that's a big thing. Like I said, I love to reiterate that. That is so cool of you guys. So, all right. So again, why don't you just go ahead and talk a little bit about what you got coming up again, because I don't know what all got froze and cut off. So just let people know again what you got going come up, and then we might talk a little more about some theory.
Sure. Real quick, we've got, like I said, we like to do some historic sites. In fact, we were invited to do the Deer Inn, which is a famous place here in East Tennessee in Blounteville. They invited us in to see if they had activity, and we were the first actual team that's ever been allowed in there. And we did, document some activity there, and we're going to do some public investigations there to share that place with those people, help raise some funds for the Deer Inn. So we're going to be announcing a couple dates there. We're also going to be doing a few more public dates at the Tipton Haynes, which is another site that isn't open to teams, but our historian actually is a historian there. So that's another place where we get to share what we do and teach people about the paranormal and help the sites, raise some funds for them. So it is helpful for both sides. It's a symbiotic relationship, if you will.
Right, and I'm going to also, to let you guys know out there, I'm going to have the links in the descriptions later on. You might have to check back tomorrow, but once everything finalizes in post through YouTube, I'll make sure to upload all the links in the description down below, where you guys can find all their social media for at least Facebook. You have a website, right? Yes, Facebook and website. Yep. Is that your two big ones, right?
Yep, and we're on Instagram and Twitter as well, so we're out there in cyberspace.
Awesome. Now, let me kind of go back into a little bit of theory for you. So, or maybe not even so much theory, but I actually would like to go back to, so maybe in the beginning, what did you have any kind of, I guess, funny moments while you were out doing your
Oh gosh.
investigations?
All the time. I mean, it still happens to this day. We experience those things. I think one of my favorites is there's a place called the TB Rippey House. It's a long story short, it's the whiskey baron family that ends up becoming Wild Turkey. We went up and investigated it. It's in Kentucky. We went up and investigated it, and we had seen something move, and it was like, what is that? Did you see that? And we're like, yeah, it looked like a shadow moved through there, and we heard noises in there. So I'm looking through there, and we're having all this happen, and it's like, wow, this is awesome. We've got something in there. Let's get in there and see what it is, kind of thing. So I've got a camera, and I'm filming the whole thing. And I go in there, and as I do, a bat smacks me right in the face. And then we realize, okay, absolutely debunked. It's a bat, but it was one of them really funny moments. So I would say that's probably one of the funniest things that's happened to me on an investigation. We laughed for a good 20 minutes, probably.
Right? Is that something that still comes up?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, there's bat jokes all the time. It's like, oh yeah, there's a bat, So yeah. So now that is also the cool thing about that is though that's one of those things now we go looking for it. We go poke around even further. Is there any signs of bats up in the attic?
Right.
Because you never know. You gotta try to chase out them things too. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. Now, I know you mentioned earlier that, and again, I'm not going to try to throw you on the spot about your beliefs, but you did mention that you were a Christian.
Yes, sir.
How does that kind of play into when you do investigations? Now, do you ever recommend? Do you have an outlet for your clients that you can recommend them to and things like that if they want to get more like help from the church, things like that, or?
Yeah. I don't know that I've ever had a case where it's been that dark that we've needed to do that. Personally, I haven't had that kind of a case. I've had dark cases. I've dealt with some dark negative entities, and maybe what guided people to follow their personal faith. But it was never anything that was troubling them enough that it was more setting boundaries, I guess is a better way to put that. Setting boundaries for those folks and helping them set boundaries, and we didn't escalate to where they needed that. But yes, that would be something that I would certainly do if the need was there. I think that's part of being a good researcher, right, is knowing those different things. On a personal note for me, my faith is stronger because of the paranormal. Because I honestly think that, I was one of those people that occasionally had that, and I'm not ashamed to say it, had that doubt of, well, what if it's not? What if there isn't anything? And now
Right.
the experience I've had, I know there is. So, and that gets deep, and we could get very deep on that too. But for me, I'm closer to my faith because of this journey.
Right, and that echoes exactly what I've recently said too. And in fact, even in my book, I wrote that too, where I didn't really set out to prove anything about God or Jesus or anything, but
Right.
through my research and through my experiences, actually, and especially in the last few years that I've intensified my research, it's actually drawn me that way. So, and I'm not ashamed of that. So,
Absolutely.
so that's awesome. Now, on the opposite side of funny moments, have you ever gotten into a case or a place where you actually sort of got scared? I mean, was there something that
Yeah.
even yourself you just were like, wow,
Yeah. And this is one of them things we could have a whole separate discussion on this. If you ask any of the people on my team that were at the Hinsdale House, and if you're not familiar with the Hinsdale House, it is, again, one of those famous places that you can pay to go and investigate. And we were actually invited to come up and do Wildwood with another team, which is a sanatorium in upstate New York, in Salamanca, New York. And Hinsdale is pretty close to that, and our case manager, Al, was really obsessed with the Hinsdale case. Those that aren't familiar with the Hinsdale case, there was a book wrote about it. It was believed to be a demonic case. It was the Dandy family in the 70s. It had several cleansings by Father Alphonse. There's a whole history there. Like I said, there's 2 or 3 books that were wrote on the property. But we didn't let that folklore or the stories that surround it set the stage for us, because that's, again, part of the puzzle. but we do our own research. And in our research, our historian uncovered that there was some inconsistencies in the folklore stories and the historical facts. And that's a big thing that we try to do too. We always try to look at, this is a claim, this is the folklore, but this is the historical facts, or this is the things that either line up or don't line up. That's a big part of what we do. So we went into Hinsdale with the thoughts that, yes, something happened here, but it was not necessarily what was some of it was the folklore that had grown over the years. But I will say this with that case. It reminded me that no matter how good you think you are at this stuff, and when I say that, I'm not saying that I think I'm that good, I'm saying you get comfortable. You kind of get a little complacent, and maybe you let your guard down, and maybe you don't ground and shield yourself as well as you should. And you probably see I'm wearing my black tourmaline because I'm a stone guy. I believe in that grounding and shielding, and I believe there's an energy exchange there. I think we deposit energy, and I think we pick up energy, and I think if you're not careful, sometimes that exchange is not, the balance isn't what you want.
Right.
So it's not always just spiritual in that sense. Sometimes it's on a different level. So where I'm going with this is, I'd never had a case. I'd always heard that you could be influenced. I'd always heard that, and that's why we've always had a strong no weapons policy. You're not allowed to bring weapons on investigations with us because you could be influenced. Even though I'd never experienced that, it was something that in my research there were documented cases by respected people in this field that had spoke of being influenced by things.
Right.
And having never experienced it myself, I still was cautious about that until Hinsdale. I am not a provoker. I do not believe in provocation. I know it's a tool. Some investigators love it. I'm not saying there's never a time that you don't need to set boundaries, or there isn't a time that you don't need to do certain things. But I am not and I'm going to use Zach Bagans as an example. I'm not that guy. I don't go in with a stick and rattle the cage because I think it's very dangerous.
Yeah, I don't do that either.
And that's the thing. I don't do that. And people that have investigated me, people that have known me for years and have been on cases with me know that that's not my style. We lost time at Hinsdale. Every one of us don't remember. We've got 7 hours of audio and video, and we felt like we were there for 2, but all of us have these lapses. It's kind of like when you have a high fever and you wake up and you remember bits and pieces. You don't know what was a dream and what was real. That's what happened at Hinsdale, and I know that sounds insane, and there's probably people out there right now going, whatever, but I'm telling you, hand to God truth with this is that I don't remember things that I did. There are clips that I have reviewed where I am full on provoking, show yourself, prove yourself, stuff I would never do, especially in a place with a dark history. So anybody that says you cannot be influenced or affected, they've not been to a place yet that can affect you, because it affected everybody on my team, and we are still months later. You ask anybody on the team, months later, we're trying to piece that together still exactly what happened. And looking back and our final analysis of that, I believe it's one of those rare, true rare elemental hauntings. Not an elemental case where you just have elemental activity, but a true elemental haunting. I think that is old energy. I think it goes back to the Native American stuff that went on that property. And I think it's just a very dark, it's a dark entity stuff that's there. Right. I don't really feel it's demonic, and I say that because all the attempts by Father Alphonse, an exorcist priest, to cleanse that property, because you can't exorcise a property as we know, but you can bless and do that, it didn't work. So why didn't it work? Well, maybe because what it is elemental, and it's a different type of energy. My personal opinion from that case. So to answer your question, that frightened me, knowing that I could be completely influenced to do things that I would not normally say or do. It made me take a step back for a little bit. It made me even for a while consider maybe taking a break because of it.
It would be scary.
Yeah, so that to me was the fear of not being able to answer for the things that I did there because I was unaware that I was doing them.
Do you think it kind of made you feel smaller, that there was definitely a bigger picture that
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And I've experienced that as well, and it really almost kind of humbles you to a point where you're like, man, there's just something way bigger that it scares you in that sense. But it also,
Yeah, because the truth is, no, despite all of our research and all the years collectively, if you take some of the greatest pioneers in this stuff, we still don't truly know for sure exactly what we communicate with.
Right.
At any given time.
Exactly. Exactly. In fact, I know Sean and I often say that all the time. We'll exchange comments back and forth about, well, how do you know you're talking to an evil spirit or a human spirit? Or,
Yeah.
I mean, in all fairness, we don't. We just have to go with our experience and all the stuff we kind of gather, and then generalize even at that. But usually we try to get in the ballpark. I think that's where experience comes in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's where your intuition comes in too. If everything inside of you is telling you to shut it down, then that's exactly what you need to do, because you are maybe skating with something that you're pushing an envelope there. If everything inside of you is saying, stop, don't go any further, get out of this environment, don't do this, that is your intuition, your sixth sense, your guardian angel, whatever you want to label it as, telling you, hey, back off.
Now,
you need to pay attention to that.
Just to kind of hit up some of the comments, try to catch up a little bit here. Of course, we got a variety of good comments. One of the questions was from BRS Media. Now, I will say this is optional for you. You don't really have to answer this if you don't feel comfortable. But he asked, so what's your beliefs on what paranormal is as a Christian?
Yeah, that's a deep one. And
that's a whole show, Rich.
Yeah, really. I don't have I guess I'm still trying to figure that out. I mean, in all fairness, there are times that Hinsdale is a perfect example, that things will happen to me and it challenges my whole thought process on the paranormal. And then there's other times where, like I said, I feel it really brings me closer, and overall it does bring me closer. So I don't think I have a true answer to that. Yeah. I don't know, because I don't know what we communicate with.
Well, I think that is kind of the answer. What you said there is, it just, again, you don't really know. It just brings you closer, and that's a good thing, though. It really is. Right. I think that's why we're always seeking the truth. So,
yeah, exactly.
And let's see, Tales from the Grotto, he said, ghosts be like peer pressure, bro. Tales from the Grotto also said, a different type of energy indeed. I mean, place with higher levels of activity over in Europe are sometimes known have quartz veins below ground. Quartz, of course, can produce electrical activity.
Sure.
And he said, I've also have been interested in learning how the affects the environment at these locations. And that's the other thing, too, is that there's talk about locations with like more limestone, more quartz, things like that. Certainly you're going to have those intrinsic properties of those crystals. Again, sure. I know Matt can't see me, but I'm also wearing I got my clear quartz on, which I've programmed for a few things. But certainly the environment, that's another thing. As an investigator, I've always tried to look at, is there underground streams?
Yes.
When Matt was talking about alluding to history earlier, sometimes you have to go back, not just the history of a home, but the history of that location.
The land.
Exactly, absolutely. The land, because you don't know if there was Indian burials, tribes. Who knows what could have been there? Some old, slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
Who knows what it was? But
and that's the thing. It's about energy, right? I mean, everything leaves an imprint, good or bad. So that energy is deposited in the environment. So yeah, if you don't do your homework and go all the way back, you may miss figuring out what's going on there because you didn't go far enough back. That's true.
Yeah. So yeah, if you guys, we're going to be probably wrapping it up here real shortly. So if you guys have any additional questions for Matt or myself, go ahead and start getting them in there now. I definitely would like to say, Matt, it's been a pleasure to have you on tonight. Certainly there's so many aspects. We could probably just talk about so many aspects of paranormal for like hours.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure hopefully we'll have you back on at some point where we can discuss some more things. Who knows? Maybe do an investigation or something together. I'd love to.
Yeah. Definitely, Josh. I want to collab for sure. When we get some stuff lined up here, I'll holler at you, and if you can come out, we'd love to do that. Maybe we could do, some live spots there through, Facebook or whatever while we're out in the field together. I think that'd be great. And like I offered to you before, Dr. Claudille, she'd love to come on, and
Yes.
you could get deeper into the Victorian era stuff because she's our lead spiritualist. She's also our lead psychic medium. That's another opportunity for your viewers to hear that side of the coin if you're interested.
Oh yeah, and we haven't really done an episode about any type of psychic mediums and things like that. We've touched on them, but again, and I certainly would love to do that. So we'll have to coordinate that for sure. And I'm sure people out there is going to want to see that side of things too. I get a lot of that interest in that, and it's always been fascinating for me as well. So by all means. I would definitely love that.
That's one of them things too. Remember how hardcore of a skeptic I was? That was another thing. Even though I was becoming a believer involved in the paranormal, I still didn't believe in psychics. I still thought that was just no, until I met Rhonda.
Well,
She changed me.
I think in the world of paranormal, there's a lot of different subjects, right? You can talk about ghosts, spirits, evil spirits, psychic mediums, and then you can go even to a bigger level of religion and the world being influenced by the devil, and there's so many rabbit holes. So when you became a believer, okay, how deep of a rabbit hole did you get into? Did you go real deep, or are you still on that surface level, or?
Yeah, I started real deep, and then I got more confused. So I started really trying to classify everything and answer, and I have more questions today than I did 14 years ago, because each new discovery, each new research item, each new piece of that puzzle leads to something else. It's another doorway, it's another rabbit hole, it's another path. And I think when we stop learning and we stop staying completely open-minded, I think that's when we are no longer going to be effective. So the short story is I started down that rabbit hole and realized that's not what I want to do. I want to stay open-minded, and I'm just going to see where the research leads me and not get caught up in the weeds if I can avoid it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, all right, guys. So I think I don't really see any other real questions. There's just a few additional comments. But look, guys, I want to again thank my special guest Matt Sorge for joining me tonight and talking about the journey from becoming a non-believer to a believer, and of course lots about investigating and theories and do's and don'ts, rights and wrongs. So again, guys, I just want to say thank you all for tuning in and watching. Please don't forget, next week we're going to have BRRS Media. Rich Wheeler is going to be on, and we're going to be talking about alien stock, which I heard some news about it being canceled, but still going to take place, and who knows. So we're going to be talking about some alien stuff next week. Look forward to that. Guys, as always, remember, seek the truth. We'll see you later.
Thanks, Josh.